Sometimes, the most life-changing encounters happen on the most ordinary days, in the most unremarkable places, between two people who have no idea they're about to rewrite each other's destiny. Love has a peculiar way of disguising itself as coincidence, of arriving precisely when we least expect it and from directions we never thought to look. In a world where genuine human connection has become as rare as finding diamonds in sidewalk cracks, where authenticity is often buried beneath layers of pretense and social expectation, the most profound relationships are born from moments of pure, unguarded kindness. On a rainy Tuesday morning in Seattle, two souls were about to collide, one carrying the weight of financial struggle, the other burdened by the isolation that comes with extraordinary wealth. Neither knew that a simple act of generosity would spark something that money couldn't buy and poverty couldn't diminish. This is the story of Marcus Thompson and Isabella Sterling, two people from completely different worlds who discovered that love doesn't care about bank accounts, that true connection transcends social boundaries, and that sometimes the heart recognizes what the mind hasn't figured out yet. Marcus Thompson, 29 years old, was a construction foreman who had been laid off 3 weeks earlier when his company lost their biggest contract. His calloused hands and weathered work boots told the story of someone who had always earned his living through honest labor, but now found himself checking his wallet obsessively and counting every dollar twice. He lived in a studio apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, where the rent took 70% of his unemployment benefits and left him choosing between groceries and bus fare most days. His thick brown hair needed cutting, his jeans had patches sewn by his own inexperienced hands, and his winter jacket was held together by duct tape and stubborn pride. 5 years ago, Marcus had been engaged to Sarah, a nurse who loved his gentle nature and unwavering work ethic. They had planned a simple wedding, saved for a small house, and dreamed of the kind of quiet happiness that didn't require wealth to sustain. But when Sarah's father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and needed expensive care, the medical bills consumed their savings, then their wedding fund, then their relationship itself. Sarah had tearfully returned her ring, explaining that she couldn't bear to watch Marcus sacrifice his future for her family's crisis. "You deserve someone who can love you without costing you everything," she had said, not understanding that Marcus would have given everything willingly. The breakup left him emotionally cautious, convinced that love was a luxury he couldn't afford. Now, his daily routine was a careful balance of job searching and penny pinching. Marcus walked everywhere to save bus fare, ate peanut butter sandwiches for most meals, and spent his evenings at the library using free internet to submit applications. His phone was one missed payment away from disconnection, and his bank account rarely held more than $40. Despite his struggles, Marcus's kindness remained untouched by bitterness. Last week, he had given his lunch to a homeless veteran outside the unemployment office. When Mrs. Chen from downstairs needed help moving furniture, Marcus spent his entire Saturday helping her, despite having no money for lunch afterward. He believed that being broke didn't excuse being heartless. His friends worried about his generosity during such tough times. "Man, you can't save everyone when you can barely save yourself," his buddy had warned him. But Marcus couldn't seem to stop himself from helping others, even when logic screamed against it. Meanwhile, across town in the exclusive Belltown penthouse district, Isabella Sterling faced challenges that money couldn't solve. At 27, she was worth $43 million, having inherited her father's tech fortune when he died in a car accident 2 years earlier. Her long auburn hair was always perfectly styled. Her clothes were designer pieces that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and her life was meticulously managed by assistants, advisors, and security personnel. But Isabella's wealth had become a prison of loneliness. Every relationship felt transactional. Every friendship seemed motivated by her money, and every romantic interest disappeared the moment she tried to hide her fortune to test their sincerity. She had tried dating apps, using fake photos and false information, only to feel guilty about the deception. Her penthouse apartment overlooked Elliott Bay, filled with expensive art and furniture that felt more like a museum than a home. She ate takeout alone most nights, surrounded by luxury but starved for genuine human connection. Her assistant handled most of her social interactions, and her security team followed her everywhere, making spontaneous encounters nearly impossible. Isabella had begun conducting what she privately called authenticity experiments, disguising herself as an ordinary person to see if anyone would treat her kindly without knowing her net worth. She would dress in thrift store clothes, take public transportation, and observe how people behaved when they thought she was nobody special. This morning, wearing a worn denim jacket and carrying a beat-up purse, Isabella was about to conduct her most revealing experiment yet. She had no idea that her quest to find genuine human connection was about to collide with Marcus's simple desire to help a stranger in need. The universe was preparing to prove that some meetings are too important to leave to chance. It was on a drizzly Tuesday morning that their worlds collided, when Seattle's famous rain turned the city into a watercolor painting of gray skies and glistening streets. Marcus stood at the bus stop on Pine Street, checking his wallet for the third time, and confirming what he already knew. He had exactly $12.50 to last until Friday. He was headed to a job interview at a construction company in Georgetown, a 40-minute bus ride that would cost him $3 each way. If he got the job, the $6 investment would be worth it. If he didn't, he'd be walking home and eating ramen for the rest of the week. The rain had intensified from a drizzle to a steady downpour, and Marcus huddled under the inadequate bus stop shelter alongside a dozen other commuters. That's when he noticed her, a young woman sitting alone on the bench, looking increasingly distressed as she searched through a small worn purse. Isabella had planned this carefully. She was dressed in a faded denim jacket from Goodwill, jeans with a small hole in the knee, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup. To anyone looking, she appeared to be exactly what she was pretending to be, a young woman struggling to make ends meet. But her distress was becoming genuine. In her effort to appear authentically broke, she had brought only the coins from her car's cup holder, $2.85 in quarters, dimes, and nickels. The bus fare was $3.25, and she was 40 cents short. Her experiment was about to strand her in the rain, far from her usual neighborhood. "Excuse me," she said quietly to the woman next to her. "Do you happen to have change for a $5?" She held up a crumpled bill she'd found in the jacket pocket. The woman glanced at Isabella's modest appearance and shook her head dismissively. "Sorry, I don't carry cash," she lied, clutching her designer purse closer. Isabella tried 2 more people, with similar results. Each person looked at her worn clothes and dismissed her request with barely concealed annoyance. She was learning firsthand how differently people treated those they perceived as having less. Marcus had been watching this interaction with growing concern. He recognized the look of quiet desperation on the young woman's face, the same expression he'd worn countless times over the past few weeks. When the bus arrived and she remained seated while others boarded, he made a decision that his logical mind screamed against. "Hey," he said gently, approaching her as the bus doors closed and drove away without them. "You okay?" Isabella looked up at him with genuine surprise. His brown eyes held kindness rather than judgment, and his voice carried concern rather than annoyance. "I'm 40 cents short for bus fare," she admitted, feeling embarrassed by the truth of it. Marcus glanced at the approaching bus, his bus, the one that would take him to his interview, and made a calculation that had nothing to do with money. Without hesitation, he pulled out his wallet and extracted a $20 bill, one of his last 2. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. "This should cover your fare and give you some extra for later." Isabella stared at the money in shock. This stranger, who clearly didn't have much himself based on his patched jacket and worn boots, was offering her $20, nearly half of what she could see in his thin wallet. I can't take this. That's too much, and you obviously need it." "Everyone needs help sometimes," Marcus replied with a gentle smile. "Besides, I can walk to where I'm going. You look like you really need that bus." The next bus was approaching, and Isabella found herself in uncharted territory. No one in her real life had ever offered her something they genuinely couldn't afford to give. Wealthy people had thrown money at her for favors, but this man was offering money he actually needed, expecting nothing in return. "What's your name?" she asked as she reluctantly accepted the bill. "Marcus," he replied, "and don't worry about paying it back. Just help someone else when you can." "I'm Isabella," she said, her voice soft with emotion she hadn't expected to feel. "And I will. I promise I will." As the bus pulled up and Isabella climbed aboard, she turned to see Marcus walking away in the rain, his shoulders hunched against the weather, but his step somehow lighter. She pressed her face to the window, watching him disappear into the crowd, and realized something had shifted inside her chest, something that felt suspiciously like the beginning of falling in love. 3 days passed, and Isabella couldn't stop thinking about the man who had given her $20 he couldn't afford to lose. She had tried to return to her normal routine: board meetings, charity galas, business dinners with people who called her by name but never really saw her. But every interaction felt hollow after experiencing Marcus's genuine kindness. She found herself checking the same bus stop every morning, hoping to see him again, carrying his $20 bill in her purse like a talisman. Her assistant, Patricia, noticed the change immediately. "Miss Sterling, you've been distracted lately. Is everything all right with the Morrison acquisition?" Isabella was staring out her office window at the city below, wondering how many people like Marcus were struggling while she sat in her ivory tower counting millions. "Patricia, do you think it's possible to love someone you've only met once?" Patricia raised an eyebrow. This was new territory for her usually pragmatic boss. "I think it's possible to be intrigued by someone, certainly. May I ask what brought this on?" That evening, Isabella made a decision that would have scandalized her board of directors. She dressed again in her thrift store clothes, took the bus to the neighborhood where she'd met Marcus, and began what she privately called the search. She visited construction sites, asking if anyone knew a Marcus Thompson. She checked unemployment offices and job centers. She sat in working-class diners and struck up conversations with locals. For the first time in years, she was actively seeking someone not for business, but for the terrifying and exhilarating possibility of love. On Friday afternoon, she found him. Marcus was sitting in a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, laptop open, clearly job hunting on the free Wi-Fi. He looked tired, and Isabella noticed he was nursing a single cup of coffee that had probably gone cold hours ago, the universal sign of someone stretching a small purchase as long as possible. Isabella's heart started racing. She had found him, but now what? How do you approach someone you can't stop thinking about without seeming like a stalker? And how do you explain that you've been looking for him without revealing why you could afford to spend 3 days searching? She ordered a coffee and a sandwich, then approached his table with what she hoped looked like casual confidence. "Marcus, from the bus stop?" He looked up and his face immediately brightened with recognition and genuine pleasure. "Isabella, hey, how are you? Did you make it where you needed to go the other day?" His first concern was for her well-being, not why she was there or whether she'd paid him back. Isabella felt her chest tighten with emotion. "I did, thanks to you. Actually, I've been hoping to run into you again. I wanted to return your money." She pulled out the $20 bill, but Marcus waved it away. "Keep it. I told you not to worry about paying it back." "You don't understand," Isabella said, sitting down across from him. "I can afford to pay you back, more than afford it actually." Marcus studied her face, noting something different in her voice, a confidence that hadn't been there at the bus stop. "What do you mean?" Isabella took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth, the point where every previous relationship had either ended or become transactional. "Marcus, I need to tell you something, and I hope it won't change how you see me." She pulled out her real wallet, leather, expensive, filled with credit cards that had no spending limits. "I wasn't actually broke that day. I was testing something. Testing whether anyone would be kind to someone they thought had nothing." The color drained from Marcus's face as understanding dawned. What Isabella offered Marcus next would change both of their lives in ways neither expected. "Marcus, I need to ask you something," Isabella said as they sat in the coffee shop, the $20 bill still lying between them on the table. "What do you do for work?" "I'm between jobs right now," Marcus admitted, the honesty coming easier than he expected. "I was a construction foreman, but the company lost their biggest contract 3 weeks ago. I've been looking for work ever since." Isabella nodded thoughtfully. "And what would your dream job be? If money wasn't an issue, if you could do anything?" Marcus looked at her curiously. That's a strange question coming from someone who was pretending to need bus fare an hour ago. "Humor me," Isabella said with a small smile. "I'm serious." Marcus considered the question, something he hadn't allowed himself to think about in months. "I've always wanted to work in sustainable construction, green building, energy-efficient homes, that kind of thing. But those jobs require certifications I can't afford, and companies want experience I don't have." Isabella pulled out her phone and showed Marcus a news article. Sterling Technologies just acquired 3 sustainable construction companies. "We're launching a new division focused on eco-friendly residential and commercial building." Marcus read the headline, then looked at her with growing confusion. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I need someone to run it," Isabella said simply. "Someone with hands-on construction experience, someone with integrity, someone who understands what it means to work hard for what you have." "Isabella, what are you saying?" "I'm offering you a job, Marcus. Director of Sustainable Construction Operations. $85,000 starting salary, full benefits, education reimbursement for any certifications you want to pursue, and a company car." Isabella's voice was businesslike, but her eyes held something warmer. "All you have to do is say yes." Marcus stared at her in complete shock. "You're offering me a job? Just like that? You don't even know me." "I know enough," Isabella replied. "I know you gave $20 you couldn't afford to a stranger who needed help. I know you walked away in the rain without expecting anything in return. I know you're the kind of person who puts others first, even when you're struggling." "But this is crazy," Marcus protested. "You can't just offer someone a job because they helped you at a bus stop." "Why not? Traditional hiring methods clearly aren't working. Look how many good people are unemployed while companies complain they can't find reliable workers." Isabella leaned forward. "Marcus, I've been running my father's company for 2 years, and I've learned that character matters more than credentials. You showed me your character without even trying." Marcus shook his head, overwhelmed. "Isabella, this is too much. It feels like charity, and I can't." "This isn't charity," Isabella interrupted firmly. "This is business. I need someone I can trust to build something meaningful, something that will make a difference. You need an opportunity to use your skills for something you care about. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement." "And what about this?" Marcus gestured between them, referring to the tension that had been building since she revealed her identity. Isabella was quiet for a moment. "That's separate. The job offer stands regardless of anything personal between us. You can take the position and we can remain strictly professional, or you can turn it down and walk away. Your choice." Marcus looked at her for a long time, seeing something in her eyes that he hadn't expected: vulnerability. She wasn't just offering him a job, she was taking a risk on him, betting her professional reputation on a stranger's character. "Why me, really?" he asked quietly. "Because in a world where everyone wants something from me, you wanted nothing. You helped me without knowing who I was or what I could do for you. That's the kind of person I want to work with, Marcus. That's the kind of person I want to build something with." Marcus picked up the $20 bill and held it out to her. "If I take this job, we start even. No debts, no favors." Isabella smiled and pushed the money back toward him. "Keep it. Consider it the first $20 you ever made working for Sterling Technologies." 2 years later, Marcus stood in the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 32nd floor of Sterling Technologies Tower, looking out over the Seattle skyline that had once seemed impossibly distant from his struggles. The transformation had been remarkable, but earned. Marcus had thrown himself into his new role with the dedication of someone who knew the value of a second chance. Under his leadership, Sterling's Sustainable Construction Division had become the most successful green building company in the Pacific Northwest, completing projects that set new standards for environmental responsibility and worker satisfaction. His salary had grown to $150,000 a year, plus substantial bonuses based on the division's success. He lived in a beautiful downtown condo with views of Puget Sound, drove a hybrid company car, and had earned 3 industry certifications that Sterling had paid for. But more than the financial security, he had found professional fulfillment he hadn't known was possible. "Knock, knock," came Isabella's voice from his office doorway. She was dressed in an elegant navy business suit, her hair styled perfectly for the board meeting they'd just finished. "Ready for lunch?" Marcus smiled, turning from the window. Always ready for lunch with the boss. Their relationship had developed slowly, professionally at first, then gradually into friendship as they worked together on building something meaningful. Isabella had kept her word. She never once made Marcus feel like her charity case or her social experiment. She treated him as an equal, valued his expertise, and challenged him to grow in ways he'd never imagined. The romantic feelings had crept up on both of them over months of late meetings, shared victories, and the kind of deep conversations that happen when two people are building something bigger than themselves. When Marcus finally kissed her 6 months ago, after they'd won a major government contract, it had felt inevitable rather than surprising. "I have something to show you," Isabella said, pulling out architectural plans. "The Evergreen Heights project got approved. 200 sustainable housing units for working families, with the community center and green spaces you designed." Marcus looked at the plans with pride. This was his vision made real. Affordable, environmentally responsible housing that would provide good homes for families like his had been. "Why me, really?" he asked quietly. "That's what we do," she replied, her eyes shining with the shared satisfaction of meaningful work. That evening, they went to dinner at a restaurant with a view of the city, where Marcus could afford to order anything on the menu without checking prices. Isabella wore a stunning black dress that probably cost more than his old monthly rent, and she looked every inch the successful CEO she was. "Do you ever think about that day at the bus stop?" Marcus asked as they shared dessert. "Every day," Isabella replied. "It was the day I learned that the best investments aren't in companies or real estate. They're in people who show you who they really are when they think no one important is watching." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "Best $20 you never spent." "Best 40 cents I was ever short," Isabella agreed, her engagement ring catching the light as their fingers intertwined. They had built an empire together, but more importantly, they had built a love that was as solid as the sustainable buildings that bore Marcus's designs and Isabella's investment. In a world where genuine connection often feels impossible to find, Marcus and Isabella discovered that love begins not with compatibility or circumstance, but with the simple act of treating each other with kindness when kindness isn't required. Their story reminds us that true character is revealed not in moments of abundance, but in moments of scarcity. When we choose to help despite having little to give, when we choose honesty despite the risk of rejection, when we choose love despite the complications it brings. Isabella learned that money could buy comfort but not connection, luxury but not love. Marcus learned that kindness is never wasted, even when it's given to strangers we may never see again. Together, they discovered that the most valuable things in life, trust, respect, genuine affection, cannot be purchased or pretended, only earned through authentic action. Sometimes, the universe disguises our greatest blessings as ordinary moments, placing the love of our life at a random bus stop in the rain, reminding us that magic happens when we're brave enough to be kind without reason and honest without guarantee. Who knows what extraordinary love might be waiting at the next ordinary moment?